Well, hello and welcome to What Else is New. I'm Kelly Green and this is my show with a bunch of open tabs, current events, a couple of cultural items to throw in for good measure. I hope you enjoy it. We're going to be going through it at fairly rapid pace. Just to let you know, a lot of the links, or all of the links actually, for this content will be in the show description down below. It is the middle of the week, March 12th of 2025, and I'm just waiting for a big snowstorm to arrive. As you can see on the windy map, it's building up over here. This is coming in from an atmospheric river. I'm about here. So over the next couple of days, we should be getting a whole ton of snow, which will be good for me to continue organizing this event that's coming up. Live podcast Potluck Supper, Talk with the Neighbors. This is coming up in April, less than 4 weeks away. And this is in response to a lot of things that are going on in the world and my own personal choices to start disengaging more and more from the social media and getting out into the real world and starting to meet people and develop community, build on the community that we already have here, develop mutual aid resources, and make myself available for folks as well, and get involved with my local community league. So that will be very exciting to come up for, and I'm hoping to make it a live event here on the channel. So stay tuned. You might be able to take part in that podcast potluck. Should be exciting. Okay, first off today, we have Buffy Sainte-Marie loses the Junos. And that's going to segue into Raven Reed, up-and-coming Indigenous artist who often resonated and has talked about that story with regards to her own experiences as an Indigenous person in Canada, being a part of the 60 Scoop. Essentially, she was taken away from her parents. So we're going to play a little song from her to get the show started, and then I'll run through a brief little recap and we'll get right into it. So here we go.
You say you feel my dark and lonely pain, to wake up and do it all again. You say you hear me through the sleet and the rain.
Raven Reed.
It's only for your gain.
Her entire family was torn apart by the government program, the 60 Scoop. She was adopted into a non-Indigenous family and raised to forget her Cree heritage. Raised in a home where she faced severe childhood trauma and abuse, and worked to overcome addictions and mental health issues through the arts. Please check out her website, ravenreed.com. You can find her over on all the socials there. Excellent, excellent stuff, Raven Reed. Okay, we're going to do a quick little look at the Yves Engler issue. You might remember Yves was arrested in Montreal for speaking out and defending Palestinian rights, and got into a little bit of a dust-up with a very vocal Zionist Israeli genocide supporter, Dalia Kurtz. He describes her as arch anti-Palestinian. So we're going to read his letter, and we're going to have a little clip from Blueprints of Disruption podcast, where he talks about how the police may have been influenced by conservative politicians. Over on the environmental front, we have GN Space for Peace. This is Bruce Gagnon's group, and he is in an interview with Pat Elder, and they're talking about PFAS contamination, largely around U.S. military bases that they are looking at. On PFAS contamination, Canada will add PFAS to toxic substances list. Maybe. We'll get into that article a little bit. And that leads into the Greenpeace article, or the Greenpeace post of a BBC article from January of this year. And we're going to touch on that for a quick little bit, and then the consequences of that regarding adaptation. Can you see that okay? On existential risks, experts show why WW3 over AI is nearly inevitable, but there are some people working against the AI future, trying to keep the future human, by futureoflife.org. Okay, speaking of humans and things that are going on and existential threats, etc., down in the United States, there are a lot of issues, the least of which
Thank you so much.
is people losing their jobs. I guess that's kind of cruel to say. I guess for those people, it would be the most of which. We're going to come close to the end with the anarchistlibrary.org with a brief look at Mutual Aid, A Factor of Evolution by Peter Kropotkin. I probably butchered that name. And lastly, we're going to leave it with Greg Palast, Politics Meets Culture, The Past Meets the Future. This is excellent, excellent stuff. Okay, let's get down to it. Live podcast upper. There's our map. Okay, Buffy Sainte-Marie. Let's hear what happened.
Once a longtime fixture on the Canadian Music Awards circuit, highly respected. But now Buffy Sainte-Marie is being stripped of her awards, including 7 Junos.
This is a big deal. It's extremely unusual.
The organization that gives out the Junos says it made the decision in light of recent information, including Ms. Sainte-Marie's confirmation that she is not Canadian.
So, not Canadian. You don't get your Canadian awards and you're going to get them taken away. This was a huge story. You might remember last year, a lot of artists were very upset. A lot of Indigenous people were very upset about this, people falling on each side of the issue. The Fifth Estate made a documentary about it and uncovered an American birth certificate for Buffy Sainte-Marie and an alleged Italian heritage. And as I mentioned, it really struck a note with Raven Reed. She's an Indigenous artist who was actually taken away from her family in the 60s scoop and has now recovered or is in recovery from that and launching her musical career. Very talented, very funny. Check her music out. She's all over the YouTube. She's on the internet. She's going to award shows. One to watch, that's for sure. Okay, back to the realm of politics. Yves Engler, he puts out a thank you to his supporters after he was released from jail. Let's give that a quick read. After spending 5 days imprisoned, I was released without restriction on my ability to discuss the charges brought against me for criticizing Israel. It's a small win for free expression and Palestine campaigning. In court on Monday, the judge effectively forced the Crown to drop its bid to block me from mentioning arch-anti-Palestinian Dahlia Kurtz. The Crown wanted to restrict my ability to mention the name of the Jewish supremacist who instigated a police complaint against me. The outpouring of support has been heartwarming and helpful. On Thursday morning, 30 joined an emergency rally to accompany me to the police station where I was detained. A similar number showed up at court on Friday, and on Monday morning I was told 100 rallied at the court. 30 were still there when I was released after 7 p.m. Protesters' presence in the court Monday morning is probably what prompted the judge to demand the jail send me immediately to court. Those who came out ensured the judge considered the free speech Palestinian issue seriously. A slew of guards commented on the number of supporters inside the court who later waited outside for my release. As a result, they treated me more respectfully. In response to the initial call, over 4,000 emailed a Montreal police inspector calling for them to drop charges against Yves Engler. Subsequently, more than 6,000 emailed the Montreal police chief and mayor requesting my release from jail and the withdrawal of all charges against me. Folk singer made a song. David Rovics, it's very good, very good. He goes on to say, we won the first round in this battle to suppress speech on Palestine, but it's outrageous that an author spent 5 days in jail to win the right to write about the person who brought charges against him. It's also scandalous the police responded to my writing about the case by claiming I was harassing them. So that's kind of a good news story in a bad news world. Keep an eye on Yves Engler and check out that link if you want to read the entire thing yourself. This is a quick little clip from Blueprints of Disruption podcast, and here Yves Engler is speaking about how that lawsuit or how those charges may have been manipulated.
We now know that the police actually initially interviewed Dahlia in the summer and opened a file and looked, I guess, at my ex and whatever evidence she brought them, and then closed the file. That the Crown told us this at court, and then there was pressure brought by Neil Oberman, a Conservative Party candidate here in Montreal, a lawyer, his law firm, sent a letter, and then they reopened the file, and then 2 months later I was charged.
Check out that podcast, Blueprints of Disruption, for a more in-depth conversation with Yves Engler regarding his recent charges, jailing, and release in Montreal. Okay, here we go on to Bruce Gagnon's group, GN Space for Peace, and he's in conversation with Pat Elder regarding PFAS, per and polyfluoroethyl. I tried to get it without reading it. PFAS, the forever chemicals, and Pat is going to explain to us why that is.
Yeah. PFAS is a forever chemical. What does that actually mean?
Well, it was 1938, and DuPont chemists in New Jersey mistakenly in the laboratory combined fluorine and carbon and brought them together and created a bond that is the strongest in all chemistry. Chlorine, fluorine and carbon together are the strongest bond. And they repel grease, they repel fire, and they repel water better than any substances ever made. Problem is, once the two combined, it is nearly impossible to get rid of them. Now, there are, and it's exciting, scientists in Japan, in both Tokyo and Yokosuka, seem to think that if you get the PFAS up to about 1,800 to 2,000 Celsius, you can break it apart, destroy it. Unfortunately, most of our incinerators are operating about half that. So anytime you hear about the incineration of PFAS, we're in trouble. But that's the thing that people don't seem to be able to get their heads around, that the stuff doesn't break down.
The stuff, it doesn't break down, the forever chemicals. So it's good to see that people are on that. I really like Bruce Gagnon, who you saw at the top of that clip. He does some excellent work. They don't have a whole ton of support. It's hard to get the algorithms to spread these types of videos around. But if you get a chance, please do check out the Global Network Against Weapons and Nuclear Power in Space. I will leave a link in the descriptions. Okay, regarding PFAS, Canada will add PFAS, which are linked to cancer and other health problems, to toxic substances list. Move does not ban PFAS, but starts a process. So this is Federal Environment Minister for at least a couple days, maybe at least a day, Stephen Guilbeault. Fun fact, I was arrested with Stephen almost 25 years ago to the day. It might even be to the day. I'll have to check my notes. We were involved in a Greenpeace action, locking onto and climbing atop of, with banners, a giant piece of oil sands, tar sands equipment, a giant coker. It was on its way from Edmonton to Fort McMurray. We ambushed it and locked it down for the day as a as a protest, I suppose. Okay, government is moving to add PFAS to the official list of toxic substances in light of growing scientific and public concern. What we're doing is unprecedented, that we would use the Canadian Environmental Protection Act to not look at one substance, but to look at the entire family of chemicals. It's never been done before, said Guilbeault. Well, sounds good so far. It will start a process to restrict them in the future. The government has started a 60-day consultation period required before adding PFAS to the toxic substances list. Okay, so it's not actually added yet. Little consult. I wonder who's going to consult. Once that listing is finalized, then the government can move ahead with regulations. And the plan they laid out today really doesn't have a lot of timelines. One of the PFAS campaigners notes. So they've got a plan. It might come in the future, but there's no timelines for the plan. It sounds like something that they would say right at the end of their government term to make people feel better about something that's never going to happen. Okay, first, the government says it will look at restricting PFAS in firefighting foams. Then, PFAS in cosmetics, non-prescription drugs, food packaging, textiles, and certain building materials, cleaning products, and waxes and polishes. Millions of people around the globe are drinking PFAS-contaminated water because of the use of PFAS-containing aqueous firefighting foam. It's most acute around airports, around military bases, around locations where there have been massive fires. Researchers have found types of PFAS in everything. As a result, almost all Canadians and Americans have PFAS in their bodies. Yay! PFAS in our bodies, in our blood, in our water. Bodies in our blood. Anyways, PFAS. Moving on to Greenpeace, who posts that CO2 in our atmosphere now more than 50% higher than before humans started burning large amounts of fossil fuels. So that isn't particularly new. But what, and this isn't going to be new either, but just to recap, the rapid increase in CO2 is incompatible with the international pledge to try to limit global warming to 1.5 C. The ambitious goal agreed by nearly 200 countries at a landmark UN meeting in Paris in 2015. So, as it says, 10 years ago in Paris, we had a goal as a global community to limit emissions and limit our warming to 1.5 C, ideally. That's not happening. The French government is taking action now, and they rolled out a plan to prepare for 4 degrees temperature rise by the end of the century. Well, that's pretty heavy. Adapting all sectors. 5 main areas: protecting people, ensuring resilience of territories and essential services, adapting human activities, protecting natural and cultural heritage, and mobilizing natural resources. The idea is not to abandon efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but to accept facing reality and actively prepare for a rise in global warming whose impacts are increasingly felt in France, saying that they are now 1.8 degrees above pre-industrial temperatures. So with the global warming and the global warming fight and all these international negotiations over the years to try and limit the warming and bring down CO2 emissions, first we had tried to avoid it, stop it. What's the word? Oh my gosh. Come on, Braino. Let's get working. First we tried to prevent it. So first there was prevention of climate change and global warming. And then the next step in that process, and this was all spelled out in the early days, prevention. Then next is mitigation. So how can we lessen the damage? And we see that in the Paris Agreement of trying to minimize that damage at 1.5. Now we realize that we can't minimize that damage. And now countries are adapting. So this was the third part in the plan: prevention, mitigation, adaptation. Now we're in full-blown adaptation preparation. What comes after adaptation, I wonder? What's the word? Let's take a look at this AI thing and maybe it will come to me.
A new paper has shown how the AI race is leading us towards mass unemployment, global conflict, and possibly extinction.
So extinction, I guess that could come after adaptation. I just wanted to play that brief little clip. It's a little bit extreme, obviously, but it is identified as one of the main risks that we could be facing with regards to AI over the next short little while. However, there are some very good people that are on that. We've got thefutureoflife.org. Their mission is steering transformative technology towards benefiting life and away from extreme large-scale risks. So I believe what they're trying to do is limit the reach of AI and make sure that we get some human safeguards put in place. There's a campaign called keepthefuturehuman.ai from that same group, and this is by Anthony Aguirre. And what we're going to do is just take a quick look at this video explainer on the problems and possible solutions.
Humanity stands at a precipice. For the first time in history, we are developing artificial minds that could exceed our own capabilities and redirect the course of civilization. Throughout history, humans have created increasingly sophisticated tools to extend our capabilities and to survive. To create and use tools is to be human. But AI is fundamentally different from any other technology we've built. The world's largest corporations and most powerful nations are racing each other to build artificial general intelligence, AGI, an AI system that can match or exceed almost all human capabilities. Hundreds of billions of dollars are being invested every year. This race exists because of the belief that intelligence equals power. A nation or company that has access to more advanced AI has a massive competitive advantage in every arena: scientific, technological, military, and economic. But when it comes to AGI, this reasoning is dangerously wrong. The AGI that nations and companies are racing to develop cannot be reliably controlled by any human institution. AI systems aren't programs engineered by people. They're digital constructs grown using giant computations on huge amounts of data. We don't really understand how they work or what's going on inside of them. We're far closer.
So that's probably an important point, that we don't really understand how they work or what's going on inside of them. Yet we're continuing to develop this technology that is definitely going to be smarter than us. It's already smarter than us in many respects. Wow, okay.
To building AGI than to understanding how it might be controlled. The risks of developing AGI are too numerous to name, from a rapid concentration of power by corporations, governments, or AI themselves, to massive societal disruption, including the collapse of social and economic structures, increased geopolitical instability, the empowering of terrorist organizations, and the development of chemical and biological weapons. These risks are not speculative. We're starting to see many of them already. Now imagine how much more dangerous the world would be with vastly more powerful AI systems. But this uncontrolled race isn't the only option. Humanity does not need to mindlessly hurtle towards oblivion. AI systems will and should be built, but we don't need to build AGI. It is not controversial to say that we should turn away from technologies that could be harmful to civilization, like we do with biological weapons, space weapons, genetic engineering on humans, and eugenics. We can impose clear limits, lines we won't cross, and things that we won't do as we build these systems. The most dangerous AI systems are those which combine high intelligence across many domains with a high degree of autonomy. The danger zone is at the intersection. Today, these properties are unique to humans and grant us the power to shape the world. We can build AIs that are powerful and useful, but controllable if we keep them out of that zone. This tool AI can help us develop new technologies, advance scientific discovery, and improve the quality of human life while remaining under human control. We can get the benefits of AI while responsibly managing the risks. It's not going to be easy, but it is possible. We need to close the gates on unchecked AGI development.
No kidding.
We propose hard limits on computational power, enhanced liability frameworks, and comprehensive safety standards. Technologically, all of these are possible today. We need your help. Now is the time to act. Whether you're a technologist, policymaker, journalist, business leader, or concerned citizen, your voice matters. Join us in ensuring that artificial intelligence remains a tool for human flourishing rather than a runaway force that pushes us aside. Let's keep the future human.
That's a good idea. And if you have an extra moment, please do check that out. Help those guys out. The window is rapidly closing on keeping the future human if it hasn't already closed. But just a quick note on that. As of this recording, I'm still human. This is still my human voice, I think. As when you're viewing it, maybe it's changed. I don't know. But regardless of that, we're moving on. Okay. Thrust into unemployment, axed federal workers face relatives who celebrate their firing. So this is pretty sad. People losing their jobs and then not even getting the support from their family. I've been treated as a public enemy by the government, and now it's bleeding into my own family. Some relatives reacting to his firing as what has to happen to make the government great again has been one of the worst parts of the entire ordeal. She has somehow been convinced that public servants are a parasite and unproductive, even though she was a public servant, says Jen. The federal job cuts are the work of Yooj, which has been tearing through agencies looking for suspected waste. No official tally of firings has been released, but the list stretches into the thousands and to nearly every part of the country. And then yesterday, there was a huge amount of news being posted about the Department of Education. Bunch of people being fired, departments closed, offices closed, etc. Bloody horrible, bloody horrible. Now, regarding Yooj, we're going to be coming up on something in resistance to Yooj in a second. But first, Peter Kropotkin, Mutual Aid, A Factor of Evolution. He wrote this in 1902. It's very dense. People don't write like this anymore. Like, look at that appendix alone. I'm going to read the first paragraph and possibly something from the end, just to give an idea of what we're digging into and the quality of writing from Mr. Kropotkin. Kropotkin? Anyways, 2 aspects of animal life impressed me most during the journeys which I made in my youth in eastern Siberia and northern Manchuria. One of them was the extreme severity of the struggle for existence, which most species of animals have to carry on against an inclement nature, the enormous destruction of life, which periodically results from natural agencies, and the consequent paucity of life over the vast territory which fell under my observation. And the other was that even in those few spots where animal life teemed in abundance, I failed to find, although I was eagerly looking for it, that bitter struggle for the means of existence among animals belonging to the same species, which was considered by most Darwinists, though not always by Darwin himself, as the dominant characteristic of struggle for life and the main factor of evolution. So he gives a huge, long essay on mutual aid and how it looks like in the world, from animal world to different human civilizations and societies up through the ages. It's super, super dense. I really should have just had 2 windows open on this at the same time so I could find my spot again and read that paragraph from near the end. Holy smokes. I told you it was dense, and I did not read the whole thing. If I had it on paper, I probably would read the whole thing, but I did not. Wow. So I guess we could call this speed reading. I wonder if AI reads this fast. There was mutual aid in medieval cities. Holy smokes. On and on and on it goes. I keep coming back to mutual aid because this is something, regardless of one's political ideology, except maybe fascism, or religious bent, aside from, say, the extreme evangelicals or the radicals amongst different religious movements. Mutual aid is quite widespread. And if you read this essay, you'll understand why. It's part of our nature. So it's not every man for himself, but there's also mutual aid. So here's a paragraph in a bit that just touches on that. It will probably be remarked that mutual aid, even though it may represent one of the factors of evolution, covers nevertheless one aspect only of human relations. That by the side of this current, powerful though it may be, there is, and always has been, the other current, the self-assertion of the individual. Not only in its efforts to attain personal or caste superiority, economical, political, and spiritual, but also in its much more important, although less evident function of breaking through the bonds, always prone to become crystallized, which the tribe, the village, community, the city, and the state impose upon the individual. In other words, there is the self-assertion of the individual taken as a progressive element. It is evident that no review of evolution can be complete unless these 2 dominant currents are analyzed. So we need to not swing from one extreme to the other, from, extreme, say, for example, authoritarian tyrannical communism to authoritarian tyrannical fascism. right? We shouldn't be swinging through those extremes. We should be looking somewhere in the middle, preferably, to find our political home where we can all get along and practice these things. Yes, we can have free agency. We can do things on our own, right? We can go out in the world and succeed or fail if we like, but we also need to practice the mutual aid, keep track of our neighbors, do unto others, all of these types of things. So that's my little rant on mutual aid. And just as a reminder, before I go into that last piece, I am doing a event live podcast potluck supper on Friday, April 4th, 2025 here in my neighborhood at Strathern Hall. It's a free event, and I am hoping to have a good turnout so we can meet lots of community members, discuss things like community organizing, maybe mutual aid. Potluck itself is a little bit of mutual aid. You could bring a little dish or bring nothing, and you're still going to eat. So if you're in the neighborhood or if you want to join us, we're going to be doing this live here on the YouTube as well. So please do join in and check out this very exciting first inaugural podcast, Potluck Supper. It should be a lot of fun. Okay, before we go on to this last piece by Greg Palast, he posted it yesterday on Blue Sky, saying that you're witnessing the war dance of the Osage Nation here on their reservation in Oklahoma. Who are they going to war against? Their new enemy is called the Tribe of Doge. So we're going to see the Tribe of Doge, or the war dance against the Tribe of Doge here in a second. Thanks for watching. Please do hit like, sub, share, do all of those things. Leave a comment down below if you have any questions or comments or suggestions on stuff to include in another show. Please do leave that or send me an email or what have you. Appreciate you watching. Thanks. Here we go.
You're witnessing the war dance of the Osage Nation here in the reservation in Oklahoma. Who are they going to war against? Their new enemy is called the Tribe of Doge. Doge has just ordered the closure of the Osage Agency. It is devastating to the self-determination, the sovereignty of the Osage Nation. This is the beginning of a new trail of tears. And this is Greg Palast at the Osage Reservation reporting.